What purpose does a financial institution even really serve in 2025? Well, they give you an education so that way you can get a better job. There are jobs where I live that are requiring a master's degree that pay $15 an hour. Who out here is getting a master's degree that says $15 an hour is going to pay that back? $15 an hour is going to pay back my financial aid, my student loans. And why are we giving mass credit to 18-year-olds anyways? Don't forget that the first thing that happens to you when you turn 18 years old is you go outside, you open up a mailbox, and you have a credit card in the mail. You have a gift from Verizon. You have a local dealership asking you to come and see you. America and consumership has turned everybody into predators and prey. That's all that amounts to. And predators want your money. They need you to consume. They need you to consume because if you don't consume, they have nothing to offer you. They have nothing to sell you. Their way of life ceased to exist. And the NCAA as a whole is the biggest Panzi scheme and money laundering scheme that is legalized probably in the entire world. And they don't pay for anything because everything is donated. You know, when we talk about the have and the have-nots at the collegiate level, essentially what you're discussing is the boosters. What universities have people making the most money? Everything is donation. In fact, Tennessee has bragged about how their donations have gone up. Oklahoma State, they don't want to pay for the athletes directly. No, what they want to do is they put a QR code on the back of a football player. You walk up with your phone, you scan the QR code, and then you donate to said player. Because the university's not going to fit the bill. What are they going to say? We don't have it. But then they're going to go online and brag and say, thank you for $100 million in donations this year. Spectacular. Then they're going to siphon all the money that they make through football and basketball and baseball and softball and everything else. And they're going to say, well, we're putting that back in the university with things like, I don't know, a $300 million facility. If I need college in order to be educated, what are libraries for? Can anybody tell me that? What does the purpose of a library serve? You know, when you're growing up, especially in my generation, you were told, hey, we're going to give you some homework. In order to research said homework, we need you to go to the library. Couldn't I have just done that on my own anyway? If I wanted to know about the true history of George Washington, couldn't I have just gone to a library and read that? And George Washington is the perfect example of the scam that is the educational system. When you're a kid, oh, it got really cold outside and he had a cold and the flu got him. When you're in middle school and high school, it's, well, there was the potential for something else and we don't really know what it was. And then by the time you get to college, some professor stands up in front of you and the first day he reads you the syllabi or syllabus or whatever the heck it is he wants to call it. And then he looks at everybody dead in the face and he goes, oh, by the way, in case you don't know, George Washington died from an STD known as syphilis. And with that scam, we're supposed to believe that the educational system has something to offer us. And before anybody pops off and says, man, it just sounds like you don't really want to work, you don't want to get a real job, blah, 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 we don't need more influencers. Why do you think influencers are influencers to begin with? Because you can go on YouTube and you can make $100,000 a year. And if you want to research something, you could do the research for yourself. Now, whether or not that person becomes trustworthy is ultimately up to you. But they can research for themselves and find the information and then give their opinion on the information that they have in front of them. And they get paid to do that. Now, there are, quote, influencers that are goofy and they do nothing but lip sync. And sure, they're not talented, but there's something about them that people want to watch. They're offering something and they're contributing because they're making money somehow. And it's paying more than that $15 an hour job that requires you to have a master's degree, which is insane. $15 an hour for a master's is bananas. That's not even going to begin to cover a fourth of the schooling that you went through. And well under 50% of people with degrees are actually having careers in the field that they studied. Why do I need a degree in art? What purpose does a communications degree serve in 2025 when we're literally in the podcast era? You get yourself about $500. You can get some lighting, a green screen, a decent microphone, a laptop, watch some tutorials on how to edit and do backgrounds and create backdrops. You could pay somebody to do a backdrop for you. You buy a couple little lighting deals and boom. $500 to $1,000. You got some decent equipment and you're in. There are people out there talking about sports that are doing better numbers than the guys on ESPN. In fact, without the ESPN backing, a lot of those guys wouldn't even be making it right now. See, the educational system is desperate to prove that it needs to exist. It really doesn't. And at the end of the day, all they are doing is convincing you, and they are using these jobs, and these jobs are using it as a way because, well, they believe in the educational system. It worked for them. Did it? Do you know how many CEOs and owners barely even graduated high school? The ability to do business person to person and the ability to read a contract is not something that they are going to teach you when you are in school. They don't even teach you how to sew anymore. When I was growing up, you took home economics, you learned how to sew. I had a pair of shorts that literally lasted me, I was in 8th grade when I sewed them shorts, I think till I was about 21, 22 years old. So roughly 9 years. You learn how to cook. You learn how to take care of yourself. When I was in 5th grade, we were taught how to balance out a checkbook. They don't teach you these things anymore. That's why private education is such a big booming thing, because they will teach you these things. They will teach you other things, and the classes will be much harder for a reason than what the public school system at any level will teach you. Because private education, that's a place where I can say somewhat exists in a good capacity, because they won't just teach you how to obtain wealth, they will teach you how to keep wealth. But what is a business economics class really going to teach you at the collegiate level? They were making fun of that stuff back in the 80s. Remember that movie Back to School? They were getting ready to build their business, and he's like, well, what's the product? And he goes, it doesn't matter. He goes, it doesn't matter. Tell that to the bank. Every time he did something, he would say, well, no. You got a bunch of stuff wrong. Why buy the land when you can rent for $1, $1.25 a square foot or whatever the case may be? He's giving off what it's really like to do business in the real world, not a fantasy land that colleges create for everybody that exists in a perfect world. And that's exactly what colleges and the NCAA has been doing the entire time, is creating a fantasy land. What do you think they do with college sports? They create a fantasy land. Over 90% of all collegiate athletes will be going pro in something else. Make it look like that college degree really matters while they're there, right? Meanwhile, you got players that were graduating that don't even know how to read. You can't graduate if you can't read because you can't fill out a form. You can't complete the test. They will push you through the system. And the NCAA will come down on a university to give the appearance of, we're regulating. No, you're not. You're just mad when you don't get your piece of the pie. You want your cut. That's why you had such a difficult time with paying players until the United States government stepped in, of all things, and said, no, you're going to allow them to collect name, image, and likeness. You can't keep doing this. They had to take them to court. Everybody laughed at O'Bannon. They thought it was funny. Oh, what they'll get $300 some a piece, blah, 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 blah. Who's laughing now? Because last I checked, Texas is recruiting people with Lamborghinis. You got people like Kent Waldrip back in the 70s who got injured, and he wasn't just injured. The poor guy was paralyzed. In fact, a lot of rules and regulations that exist today for the challenged and handicapped, those rules exist because of him. And he fought the University of TCU into the 90s. Late 90s, he fought the NCAA, he fought TCU, trying to get workman's compensation for what happened to him that day. And because he wasn't an employee, he couldn't get anything. Now, how is that right? We're not talking about fair. We're talking about right and wrong. All because they don't want to have to pay out the money. And somebody's going to know that situation and go, well, the University of Alabama. Dude, the University of Alabama was just giving them crumbs along to make themselves look good. And Bear Bryant basically was stepping in because he knew the universities weren't going to. They created programs in his names, but man, they've got a dozen programs and a dozen different names for every university. They just want you there so that way they can get tax write-offs and financial aid from the government. It's not to help you. It's got nothing to do with you, because when you need the help, they won't be there. They will do things that they're not supposed to do, like withhold your transcript. And you'll take it all the way up to the top. And they won't bother to look into it. And if you need help with something, they'll say, well, call this number or talk to that person or email this guy. And you just round and round and round and round and round and round and round, because they're all looking out for each other at the end of the day. And all they really care about is the money. How can we bring in the money? You know, the NCAA wanted to bust, Miami and all these other universities for cheating by paying players under the table. No, they were just doing what you were never willing to allow them to do to begin with. And once the lid got ripped off of college football and everybody saw what was really going on the entire time, you couldn't take it. You couldn't deal with it. Why? Because the NCAA lied to you and created a fantasy world about what college football was about. It was never about the pride of the school. It was never about the pride of the educational system, and it was never about taking somebody out of the inner city and giving them an opportunity that they would never have otherwise. It was exclusively about making money, because as long as an athlete exists, then that means sponsorship deals from Coca-Cola and local vendors will exist as well. So you won't have to pay for anything. So whenever you collect money at the gate, that goes directly back to the university. Isn't it a wonderful scam? It's amazing to think that back in the 30s, stadiums would not allow Bud Light to even hang up a banner in their stadium. Now, these stadiums wouldn't exist without Anheuser-Busch. It's amazing what you're willing to give up in order to get money. Malcolm X, who unjustly did time for minor thievery, writes in the case against college that he learned more in prison than he would have ever learned in college. In fact, in his day, they actually used to hold debates, prisons against other prisons, about politics, economics, new business developments. They would actually hold debates and competition debates against other prisons. Now all that's privatized. We need to get back to a place where we're able to think for ourselves. I'm not an anarchist. Laws should exist, but those laws should exist to protect the people, not just the extremely wealthy. I'm Drew Duncan. Everybody stay safe, take care of yourselves, and have a wonderful rest of your night and or day.